Nathan Hale never believed the stories his neighbors whispered about Old Briar Road. He had driven that road 100 times, sometimes late at night, sometimes half asleep from long shifts at the diner. Nothing ever happened. Just cracked pavement, tall trees, and the isolating silence of the woods. But on that particular New Year's Eve, everything about the road felt wrong the moment his tires rolled onto it. The temperature had dropped suddenly that afternoon, and frost clung to the branches like thin white claws. Nathan's breath fogged the windshield even with the heat on. He hated using his high beams, but the road was too dark, too narrow, too empty to risk their absence. Shadows twisted at the edges of the trees, sometimes looking human, sometimes looking like nothing recognizable at all. About halfway down the long stretch before the turnoff to the small cluster of homes where Mrs. Donner lived, Nathan noticed something pale among the trees. At first he thought it was an abandoned sign or some reflective trash. Then it shifted. Then it stood still. A person. No, a girl. She was facing the road, her thin figure pressed back against the dark tree trunks. She wore a dress so faded it was almost gray. Her hair hung in stringy waves that looked wet. She did not move. She did not wave for help. She simply stood there as if she had been waiting for someone. Nathan drove past slowly, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. He expected her to turn her head or hold out her hand. She did nothing. As his car rolled by, his lights washed over her face, and for a moment he wished he hadn't looked. Her eyes were wide, sunken, unfocused. Her mouth hung slightly open as if forming a sound she had forgotten how to make. He tried not to stare in the rearview mirror. But his instinct made him look. And when he did, he saw her head turn toward him, watching the taillights fade, her body still perfectly still. By the time Nathan reached Mrs. Donner's house for the annual gathering, his nerves had settled only a little. Laughter spilled from the porch. Warm lights glowed in the windows. The smell of cinnamon and baked ham drifted through the doorway. It was the exact opposite of what he had left behind on the road. Inside, everyone greeted him, but he couldn't shake the cold crawling along his spine. He kept glancing out the windows, half expecting to see someone in a gray dress standing near the tree line. He told himself he was being dramatic. The woods did that to people. Midnight arrived, then passed. Guests trickled out one by one. Nathan stayed behind to help Mrs. Donner stack chairs and gather empty cups. After an hour, the house fell quiet. He finally stepped outside to leave. His car sat alone in the circular gravel drive. Frost coated the windows. The night seemed darker than before. Once the engine started, a low-pressure alert blinked on. Nathan groaned. Cold weather always messed with his tires. He told himself he could drive home slowly and check them later. Then he remembered her. The girl. Standing alone. Waiting. There was another route home, but it would add almost half an hour. He hesitated. Then he shook his head, convincing himself it was nothing. Just a lost local, or some teenager pulling a prank. He drove back the same way. 5 minutes down Old Briar Road, the car jolted. A grinding sound hit from beneath the driver's side. Then the whole car lurched. Nathan clenched his teeth as he guided it to a stop. When he stepped out with his phone flashlight, his stomach dropped. All 4 tires were shredded. Not punctured. Ripped open. The woods went silent. Nathan looked up. Someone was standing at the edge of the trees. The dress. The pale skin. The stillness. She was closer now. Much closer. And this time, she spoke. I found you. The words were soft, almost gentle. But they froze Nathan's blood where he stood. He had no idea how fast she could move. He only knew he needed to run. And the worst part was that she was already stepping toward him. Evan Clark had driven for 9 hours before he finally saw the flickering sign for Pine Rest Motel. A freezing rain had started somewhere between the state line and the narrow rural highway, turning the windshield into a smeared pane of moving shadows. His nerves were shot, his head throbbed, and the silence inside the car made him feel like he was sinking deeper into himself. He only needed one night of rest before heading onward. The motel sat alone at a crooked bend in the road, surrounded by tall cedar trees and an empty gravel lot. A single office light glowed through a dusty window. Evan parked and stepped out, wincing as the cold bit through his coat. Inside the office, a small metal bell sat on the counter. Evan tapped it gently. From a side door, an older man shuffled out, wiping his hands on a rag. His eyes were pale and unfocused, like he hadn't slept in years. "Evening," the man said softly. "Name's Old Rowan. You need a room?" "Just for the night," Evan answered. Rowan gave him room 8. The keys jingled as he handed them over. As Evan walked toward the outside stairway leading to the upper rooms, he noticed something strange. The lights near room 9 flickered steadily, like a heartbeat. And the door to room 9 was cracked open just a few inches. Inside the crack, darkness sat heavy and unmoving. Evan quickened his pace. The last thing he wanted was to deal with creepy neighbors. Room 8 was small, plain, and smelled faintly of cedar. He set his bag down, locked the door, and collapsed onto the bed. Exhaustion pulled at him immediately. He closed his eyes. Then he heard it. Breathing. A slow, steady breath. Not his. Not from outside. From inside the room. Evan shot upright. The room was empty. The corners were shadowy but harmless. The closet door was wide open. The bathroom silent. The breathing had stopped. He shook his head and lay back down, telling himself it was nothing but road fatigue. Sometime after midnight, he woke again. This time to a soft tapping on the wall between room 8 and room 9. Tap. 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 Slow. Deliberate. Evan pressed his palm to the wall. There was no vibration, no movement. Then the tapping stopped. Replaced by something else. A whisper. At first he thought it was the wind. But it grew clearer. "Let me in." Evan's breath hitched. He backed away from the wall, stumbling over his bag. The whisper came again, faint but certain. "Let me in." He grabbed his coat and stepped outside the room, unable to stay another second. The hallway was silent, except for the buzz of the flickering light by room 9. That door was still cracked open. Evan swallowed hard. He wanted to go to the office, wake Old Rowan, and demand a refund. But he needed answers. Or at least a reason not to panic. A faint shuffling sound came from behind him. Evan turned. A young woman in a faded uniform stood halfway down the hall holding a trash bag. Her name tag read Lena Gray. She froze when she saw him. "You heard it, didn't you?" she asked quietly. "Heard what?" Evan whispered, though he knew what she meant. Lena stepped closer, her voice lowering. "Whatever you do, don't look inside room 9. Evan's heartbeat quickened. "Who's in there?" "No one," Lena said. "No one living." Evan waited for her to laugh or admit it was a joke. She didn't. "Room 9 is occupied," she continued. "But not the way you think. Years ago, before Old Rowan bought this place, a family stayed here during a winter storm. The daughter disappeared. People said she never checked out. And they never found her." Evan's stomach knotted. "She was staying in room 9, Lena whispered. "And ever since then, guests hear things. Tapping. Breathing. Some even see someone standing inside through the cracked door. But if you open it fully, the room is empty. Evan glanced toward the door. The small gap seemed darker than anything around it. Why keep renting the motel? He asked. Rowan can't leave, Lena said. Not anymore. And I think she won't let him. Evan felt cold sweep through him. I just want to go. I'll drive in the morning. Lena hesitated before answering. You won't make it through the night if you stay in room 8. She doesn't like new guests. Before Evan could respond, the hallway light sputtered violently. A shadow slid across the doorway of room 9. Not a person. Not exactly. Lena grabbed his arm. Don't run. She follows when you run. Evan's voice shook. What does she want? Lena stared at the crack in the door. She wants someone to take her place. The light flickered again. The breathing started. And room 9 opened a little wider. Caleb Martin never liked driving the old tractor path behind his family orchard after sunset, but he had no choice that night. A storm was brewing, black clouds rolling low and heavy across the sky, and he still needed to move the last crates of apples into the barn before the rain hit. The orchard stretched far beyond the house, a patchwork of twisting branches and fallen leaves. In daylight, it looked peaceful. At night, it felt like an endless maze. As Caleb loaded the final crate, he noticed a figure at the edge of the orchard, partially hidden behind a leaning apple tree. At first, he thought it was a lost hiker or maybe one of the neighbors passing through. But as the figure stepped closer, he realized she wasn't dressed for the cold at all. A woman, pale from exhaustion, wrapped in a thin shawl that barely clung to her shoulders. Are you hurt? Caleb called. The woman stepped forward, her breath trembling in the cold air. Please, I need help. I've been walking for hours. Caleb motioned her closer. Come inside the barn. You're freezing. She nodded and followed him inside. The barn lantern glowed warm and soft, lighting her face. She was young, maybe around Caleb's age, with tired eyes and hair tangled by wind. I'm Faye Rowland, she said quietly. I'm sorry to bother you. No bother, Caleb replied. I'm Caleb. What happened? Did your car break down? Faye hesitated, twisting her hands together. Not exactly. I came out here because I thought I could hide. I thought I could get away from it. Caleb frowned. From what? Her eyes darted toward the orchard, the trees swaying slightly under the coming storm. Something is out there. It's been following me since dusk. Caleb tried to push aside the chill crawling up his back. A coyote? A stray dog? Faye shook her head slowly. It isn't an animal. It's older. Caleb forced a steady breath. Look, you're exhausted. Let's get you warmed up. But as they stepped outside the barn, a sudden wind swept through the orchard, bending the branches with unnatural force. The leaves rustled like whispers. Not random. Not scattered. Rhythmic. Calling. Caleb stiffened. Did you hear that? Faye's face drained of color. It's trying to speak. It always does before it moves. Caleb didn't fully understand, but the orchard suddenly felt wrong. Like something beneath the soil was stretching, waking. He guided Faye quickly toward the house. Lightning pulsed in the sky, illuminating the orchard rows. Then Caleb saw it. The ground shifted. Just for a moment. A ripple beneath the leaves. As if something enormous had rolled over beneath the earth. What is that? Caleb whispered. It lives under places like this, Faye said. Places with deep roots. It digs tunnels, waiting for travelers or wanderers to pass too close. I stepped over one of its mounds earlier. That's when it started calling my name. It said your name? Caleb asked, stunned. Yes. And now it knows yours too. Before Caleb could process her words, a faint voice rose from the orchard floor. A soft whisper, drawn out through the soil. Caleb. He froze. Faye grabbed his sleeve. Don't answer. Don't move. The whisper came again, louder. Caleb. He felt the ground tremble under his boots. Tiny cracks formed in the soil leading toward them like veins. The earth wasn't shaking normally. It was pressing upward. We need to get inside, Caleb said. But as they reached the porch steps, a deep groan echoed beneath them. Something began scraping its way forward. Wood creaked. Dirt split apart. And then, slowly, a long pale hand emerged from the soil near the base of the porch. Faye screamed. Caleb yanked her toward the door and slammed it behind them. The lights inside the house flickered. The boards beneath their feet vibrated as though something was knocking from under the foundation. In the corner of the kitchen, an old rotary phone hung on the wall. Caleb grabbed it with shaking hands and dialed the local historian, Mr. Cullen, who knew every superstition in the county. Mr. Cullen answered on the third ring, groggy and irritated until Caleb explained the situation. The older man's voice hardened immediately. Boy, listen to me. If the earth is calling your name, it means it's marked you. You stepped over its breath. It wants you now. How do I stop it? Caleb asked. Mr. Cullen did not hesitate. You don't. You survive it. The line went dead. The house fell silent. Then the knocking returned. This time from all sides. From beneath the floorboards. From the walls. From the orchard itself. Faye gripped Caleb's arm. It's burrowing. It's coming up under the house. We need to get to the truck, Caleb said. Now. But as they reached the back door, the whisper drifted through every crack. Caleb. Faye. The ground outside heaved violently. Boards split. Dirt showered upward as if something massive was rising. Caleb looked at Faye, determination fighting terror. Run on my signal. Faye nodded, trembling. The floor buckled. The house groaned. And the voice beneath the orchard whispered one final time. I found you. Caleb forced the door open. The ground outside was moving. And something was waiting to climb out.